Story Late Night. It is our positively shameless black sheep of the storytelling family. So here you hear adults only stories, kind of a bleep-worthy theme sometimes. It's all live on stage without notes, with featured storytellers intermixed with an open story slam. So it's a pretty good time.
All right, my name is Jessica Holmes, and I'm kind of I've called myself the creative driving force behind Story Night. It's a live storytelling program that we put on once a month. We've been doing it for 5 years. And every month people come and tell true stories on a theme, live without notes, with featured storytellers who tell 10-minute stories, and then it's intermixed with an open story slam, and everyone gets prizes, because that's our ethic.
If men really are that stupid though, can I just use some other signifier that I'm up for it and like keep the sequence? It's like, so this is my idea. I'm thinking, like, imagine the scenario. Here's me at a bar, and then I'm just wearing really demurely like this cock ring, you know? I really feel like it's more the single ladies who need a heads up, if you know what I'm saying. So what I'm gonna do is take off the cock ring and just be like, I'm looking for this circumference. Are we a match? And then he'll just be like, your sweater looks like the mom from the Goldbergs. So I'll put back on my cock ring and just be like, does this turn you on? No, probably not. I'm amazing at dating, you guys. That is the takeaway from this story.
Well, Story Night was kind of an idea that we had. It was inspired by a New York storytelling program called The Moth. And The Moth was a really successful program, and we knew that either we could bring The Moth to Boise or we could start something of our own. But we kind of had no idea how immediately popular it would become, and it just kind of took off and had a life of its own, I felt like. And so now, just recently, we formed it into a nonprofit organization, and we're hoping to make it last in Boise for a really long time, just like The Moth has lasted in New York and expanded into so many cities across the country. So that's what we want for Story Night. I think Boise is such an amazing town for theater and comedy. Story Night has been a great partner with Boise Contemporary Theater, which has been like a really exciting company for Boise, with sort of plays that have been written in Boise and about Boise and that incorporate Boise into it. They recently just put on a show where the audience came with the director to different locations in Boise, and the story kind of unfolded that way. It was really amazing. And also comedy, we have a great comedy scene here. This contest is going on right now, Boise's Funniest Person, where 20 people who are new to stand-up compete week after week until they get to one funniest person. And I actually did this contest a couple of years ago, and it was really amazing for me. It really helped me figure out what stories are in the smallest way, in the smallest, funniest, most humiliating way. So I love stand-up comedy. Boise is a really great place for art, I think.
Can you bring me the vessel, one of the Story Slam denizens of hell? So I have a lot of really important work to do, so instead of doing that today, I mapped out Dante's Inferno over there. All 9 levels. Thank you so much. So I think I love it. It starts out in the vestibule of hell. I really think that I'm just hanging out in the vestibule because all that's there are disinterested angels. Just totally me. And also souls of the futile. I love that. That's truly where I live. I'm in the vestibule of hell at all times.
I think the difference between doing stand-up comedy and judging stand-up comedy, I don't know. Being in this contest a couple years ago it is so nerve-wracking just to tell. They only did like 2.5 minutes of comedy, but it felt like they just expose so much of like who they are as a person and what they think is funny and what they've gone through. And I just feel like watching stand-up is one of the most excruciatingly intimate things you can do. And it was great to judge it because I got to be funny at the moment, but I didn't have to plan anything. And it was also really hard because it was hard to, like, you know, people expose themselves through comedy, and then you're like, this is what you just showed me, and they're like, I'm terrified. Yeah, so that's stand-up comedy.
All right, so now we have our next featured storyteller. Before I bring him up, I just feel like I want to kind of tell you like the background of most of my jokes, which I think if I ever wrote an autobiography, I would call it a series of humiliating events, because really that's the origin story of every joke. And that joke that I just told, this isn't, I don't know why, but there's like a fine line between, they say that comedy is tragedy plus time equals comedy. But sometimes that ratio, you skip ahead. Just, you're too close, there has not been enough time.
Bring people in by showing them something that they believe in too, and then you kind of take them on a little ride where you change their perspective a little bit. And I think that's kind of what makes people laugh sometimes. It's like, oh, here's this thing we all experience, and here's a funny way of looking at it. And then it's like, oh, we're all in this together. And that's what I think works about Story Night too, is that people are just sharing kind of their experience of living, which is kind of universal, and then making people relate to it, whether it's funny or sad or just exciting, you know. It's our story as people.
I don't know if you have experienced this, but hell is really Facebook during a breakup. It just feels like a junior high hallway, and you're just constantly trying to avoid seeing what's in people's lockers. Like, I don't want to see like whose picture's in there or who's holding hands with who. I don't want to see. But so I know that breakups aren't really a competition or anything, but I knew that I officially lost my breakup when my ex-boyfriend's new burlesque dancer girlfriend sent me an event invitation to. The name has been changed to protect the innocent, but to Dirk's Pussy Party. I was like, what could even be my comeback from that party, you know? Like, and I just have my own event called like Jessica's Dick Festival, or maybe like Jessica's Cock Extravaganza. No, but more realistically, it would just be Jessica's Sausage Party. The event photo would just be me alone in my bedroom, like wearing the 1970s zip-up velour onesie jumpsuit I wear when I'm really sad. With like some cat hair matted right here. Just surrounded by Oscar Mayer wieners. You know what I'm talking about. And the event time would just say existential. And then the event description would just be one word. It would just say #winning. So, yeah, lovely people, those two.
On my immediate career goals. Oh my god. So my goals, I would really like Story Night to be in a place where it feels sustainable, which means it feels like it has the support to make it run without people just giving up all their time and energy for free, basically. Which they're not. I mean, Story Night supports itself, but it's always really tough to do anything beyond that for us. And then my career goals, I run this copywriting business where I write for different ad agencies and businesses, and I really love that job, so I would like to keep that being successful. And then my main goal is I want to be a writer. Like, I would love to write books and publish books somehow. So I'm working on that. That's it. Yeah. Hopefully within 3 years that will have happened a lot, at least once.
This closet clearing is only because I've been trying to kind of up my dating game a little bit, because I've realized that hell is other people when you're dating and single. Because I've heard from some fairly reliable bitches that my outfits tend to come across sometimes as sex discouraging. There's something about all the beading and breastplates that tends to read as "abandon all hope, ye who enter here." You know? And I just am like so frustrated with it. And they're just like, men don't care about fashion, and their reasoning is always the same. They're like, men are stupid, you know, and they just need like.
Well, for story night, for stand-up comedy, I was thinking about this today. Like, when I decided to do this contest, I was going through a breakup at the time, and I was so miserable. So it was a really hard time for me to like try and be funny. But instead what I did was I looked at all the things in my life that I'm kind of embarrassed to me a lot. And I just made those embarrassing things into jokes. So it's still kind of weird. So I have jokes about like having adult acne, and I have jokes about like my recent live-in breakup at the time, and I have jokes about gosh, what else embarrassing? Just everything embarrassing you could ever imagine. Jobs I failed at, dates I failed at, but somehow it's healing and somehow it's not. I don't know, that's stand-up comedy. I don't know, yeah. So basically humiliating, surprising experiences. That's what I always tell people for story night. It's like, oh, think about a surprising moment, something that changed your course, or something embarrassing. Either way, it's going to be a good story. That is an experience that a lot of people who have been on stage a lot have had, where you bomb. Like it's something that has been talked about. I've bombed a lot. Usually, I don't know, when people don't laugh, it's either you didn't set up the joke right, or maybe the thing that you think is funny actually it kind of icks most people out. That happens sometimes. Or when they don't laugh at story night, it's different because they could be experiencing a range of other emotions. You never know. Like, it's hard to get addicted to that comedy high because you're used to people laughing and laughing and laughing. And then when you're telling a story from your life, like, it'll be funny and then it'll be sad and it'll be intense and it'll be different. But I feel like no matter what, you can feel what the audience is feeling, and you kind of take that ride with them. And the moment you lose that connection with the audience is the moment when you really start to tank. So personally, I feel like bombing for me has been awful, but has really taught me what doesn't work. And that's kind of more valuable than knowing what does work sometimes.
The cool thing that featured storytellers get to take away from this, besides everything that they take away from this, public humiliation, no.
Sometimes you miss that, you know, there is only one time for your punchline, honestly. And if you miss that window, you can't go back and be like, oh, the punchline was supposed to go there. It just only works once. And that's what I think is so great about what comedy taught me, is that you can package things in a way that feels fresh every time, and that even feels fresh to you. But that is beautifully timed. And that's usually the essence of a great story. And I don't know if I have that down in my storytelling, but I'm getting it down in joke form a little bit better. Just to have things like be beautifully timed, like open up a mental image for someone and change their perspective for a second and then let them go.
So Story Late Night, we started this basically because we had two coalitions at Story Night. One was like, please be more like provocative and cuss. And one was like, stop all this swearing. So we were like, okay, we'll make an adults only program. And I do have to say that at our first slam, on our first late night 3 years ago, naked, I think our first story slam may have resulted in a divorce. That's the rumor. And then also that night there was another story about this girl gets a condom stuck in her hoo-ha, and it was very provocative for Boise at the time, but it later became an episode of Broad City, and I don't think those two things are related, but I think that is cool. So, no, basically, this program is all about getting rid of shame. Like, shame does weird, distorted, terrible thing. It's creating our own personal hell, really. So this program is all about like, hey, wait a second. I'm human. I'm not holier than thou. I'm gonna tell you something really provocative right now. So, who's it gonna be?
Well, I think for people who have never seen the show, Story Night is really about kind of the feeling that you get when you're there, because that is the hardest thing to kind of get across when you're talking about people just telling stories from their life on stage. It seems like it might be boring. But when it comes to the situation and people, it's like one of the most exciting things that you can do. And the feeling of somebody just being a live wire, I call them, on stage, and connecting with an audience is so electric. And that's why Story Night has been so popular and why it's worked. So we're just so grateful to the brave people who come up on our stages every month. It's really remarkable, and it keeps getting better and better too. Like people just keep opening up more and more, and Boise has such depth, just like every community of any size probably has a lot of stories in it that you would never imagine. So. And I do want to show you though, on our poster there is actually an escalator to heaven, but it doesn't have anything going. There's no landing, you guys. So this black sheep is just gonna go. So it's a good time, paradise. And I feel like comedians who are like, this is a way for me to make sense of not only my life but of our entire society. And then I'm just going to keep finding ways to make it more and more relevant and interesting. So I really love Amy Schumer. Louis C.K. is doing the same thing. Like Nick Kroll I love. I don't know. There's so many great comedians out there doing great things. So it's not like stand-up is my main profession, but I just think about it a lot.